It started out as a great day on the way to work. I passed all the traffic lights and turned green. And when I got there, wonder of wonderers, there was a free parking space right outside the front door an hour after I arrived at work. Natalie, my secretary, came into my office and said that Tom Snelling was on the second line. I picked up the phone, said good morning, and then listened, as Tom told me that after thinking it over, he was going to sign a contract and collaborate with us. This was a deal I had been working on for almost 2 months, and it was a contract worth over $6 million for my company. Tom said that the signed contract was faxed to me while we were talking. I thanked him profusely, and after he hung up, I went to the fax machine, and sure enough, the contract was there. I took the contract and went to Barry's office. Barry is my boss and the owner of the company, and asked his secretary if she could see if Barry could spare me a few minutes. She checked, and he was able to. So I went into his office and told him I was there to brighten his day. I handed him the contract, and he looked at it and smiled. He told me that he never thought for a minute that I would succeed with anything spelling. Several others tried this, but they didn't succeed. He smiled at me and said that my bonus based on the deal would be obscene, and then told me to get back to work at 11. Stella, Barry's secretary, called me and said that Barry needed to meet me urgently entering his office. I headed for the chair, but he told me not to bother sitting down since I don't intend to stay with him long enough to get comfortable. He then told me that as of noon that day, I was the new VP of Sales, and that one of my first duties as VP of Sales was to board a flight to Dallas and smooth out the ruffled feathers of Mike Thomas, who was one of our largest clients. He told me that Stella had all the details and sent me on my way as I was picking up my things from Stella. She asked me if I would like her to arrange a trip for me, and I thanked her for the offer, but said I could handle it myself back at my office. I tried to call my wife Terry to tell her the good news, but was told she was out of office, so I left a message that I would call back later. I headed home to pack my bag, and when I returned, I saw Terry's car parked in the driveway. Strange, I thought, as I drove up and parked behind her. As soon as I opened the door of the house, I realized what was happening. "Oh God, yes, take me, do me good," echoed throughout the house. I walked to the bedroom door and saw my wife of 15 years making love to Randall Cunningham, who was her boss where she worked. They were so into it that they didn't even notice me standing in the doorway, and they made so much noise that they didn't hear the click of my cell phone when I took their picture. I quickly scanned the photos to make sure I had clear shots of the two, and then quietly left the house. It took me 25 minutes to get to Sampson & Sons, and when I got there, I asked if I could see Bart Simpson for a minute. We knew each other quite well, and he stood up to greet me and extended his hand to me as I entered his office. "It's good to see you, Rob, but if you came to ask Terry to lunch, you wasted your time because she's not here. I know exactly where is, and I also know who she's with. I would like to show you something," and I showed him the photos from my phone. "When did you do this?" "About half an hour ago, where in my house they didn't even notice me when I was taking pictures. They are supposed to be having lunch with one of our clients." He checked the file on his desk, read the number to me, and asked Terry's cell phone number. "Right?" I nodded. "Yes?" "And he phone number, right?" I nodded yes, and he took his phone and called. We waited, and finally his call was answered. "Terry, your husband is here in my office, and he just showed me some very disgusting photos of you and Randall that he took about half an hour. Half an hour ago, where in my house they didn't even notice me when I was taking pictures. They are supposed to be having lunch with one of our clients." He checked the file on his desk, read the number to me, and asked Terry's cell phone number. "Right?" I nodded yes, and he took his phone and called. We waited, and finally his call was answered. "Terry, your husband is here in my office, and he just showed me some very disgusting photos of you and Randall that he took about half an hour ago. You both need to come back here and pick up any personal items you have here, and also go to HR and get your last check. I want there to be no trace of any of you left in this building by 5 on this afternoon." There was a pause, and then, "No. Terry, we have nothing to talk about. Goodbye." He hung up and said, "I'm sorry, Rob. I had no idea. What are you going to do? I'll divorce her." "No. I meant as far as my company is concerned, nothing. Even if you had rules that prohibited what they were doing, you would have to know what they were doing to enforce them, and it is obvious to me that you had no more idea of what they were doing than I did. We are fine. I'm just sorry. I won't see you at company picnics and parties anymore." I stood up, We shook hands, and I turned to leave. But before I got to the door, he said one thing: before you go get a divorce. I turned to face him. I never dealt with your company, because your wife worked here, and I was always concerned about the conflict of interest. Terry doesn't work for me anymore, so call me sometime next week. Okay? I smiled at him and said, I'll definitely call, and left to look for a store where I could buy everything I needed for my trip to Dallas. Please like and subscribe to the channel and you will never be cheated on.